So last week, we kind of just did an intro into concepts of spirituality within Islam as a tradition. We broke down what the word ihsan means and started to essentially create a roadmap for how we want to approach the text. And one of the things that I'd asked people to do was just take a look at the first chapter. So if you want to pull up on your phones, the book is called The Book of Assistance by Imam Al-Haddad. You can get in the PDF all over the internet. And we started to read the first chapter, which was on yaqeen, or certitude. We're going to start to look through that today and understand and kind of extrapolate a little bit more from the chapter what can be applicable to us individually. And so if people want to take a minute, just pull up the book, the text. These are very short, concise chapters. There's not, anywhere in this text, a chapter that's like 20, 30 pages long. And the idea with it is that it's creating for us a strategic mode of engaging in our own spiritual increase. So just a couple of things as we're going through it. For those who ended up fasting today, we're going to have iftar after Maghrib. Whether you're fasting or not, you should definitely just stick around. And similar to last week, there's going to be kind of opportunity for discussion in this conversation as well. So we get to know the people kind of sitting around us and can engage in that discussive mode. That would be great. So people are ready for that. So one of the things that we talked about last week that we want to kind of frame this conversation around again is that a lot of this is going to be rooted in perspective, right? And we want to be able to understand that fundamentally, this is what we said ihsan is. It's about beauty, but a perspective that's attached to the eye, right? In an Adamic sense of creation, where we have a narrative that teaches us about the relationship now of the Prophet Adam alayhi salam and Iblis, Shaitan. You have an act that transpires that many of us are likely familiar with. Adam is created. Everything in the heavens is told to prostrate to him. Everything does except Iblis. And Iblis creates now this flawed analogy that I am of fire, he is of earth. Why would I do this, right? Sensing that the roots of our existence is what makes me categorically superior to. It's an act of flawed logic. It's an act of arrogance. It's an act of racism. May Allah protect us from these things. But also, it interjects now like flawed perspective. Everybody sees what's taking place. Iblis sees it different. Do you understand? There's an absence there now of being able to process and synthesize because he's looking at this through whatever it is that he's holding within, right? These are not small spiritual maladies. Racism is like terribly haram. May Allah protect us from it. You don't want to ever justify or validate it in any way, shape, or form. No excuses. It is deeply problematic. It's also attached, though, to the absence of deep ihsan, right? Because what? It's a beauty attached to how we see things. So if you see somebody through the color of their skin as being inferior to you, how is this not related to the state of your heart, right? Arrogance is not like a minor spiritual malady. It's like a crazy spiritual illness. May Allah protect us from it, right? It's influencing his perspective. You get what I mean? Right? It dictates and defines how he sees the circumstance. Does that make sense? Okay. And so throughout the course of our conversations, we're going to engage in an understanding of how we can deepen in this relationship to what it is that we call ihsan, or spirituality. And today we're going to start with that first chapter that talks about yaqeen, right? Or certitude. I was told very kindly that my handwriting is garbage. So if you can't read my handwriting, let me know. and I'll try to improve it. Huh? It's pretty good. Do you have ugly handwriting also? Is that why? Just because it's better than yours doesn't mean that it's nice. What did we say?
That's like,
huh?
Why are you roasting the person that's trying to pick you up?
My bad.
So what did we say about Yaqeen last time? Why did Imam Al-Haddad, who said, start with this as the first chapter? You remember? Anybody paying attention? Why do you think he starts with this? What did we say?
He said that it was the end goal. And so regardless of which path we all start with, we're all going towards it.
Yeah, so it's a destination, right? Here's where we want to end up. Certitude, yaqeen, this is where we want to land. You guys can sit next to each other. It's okay. Yeah. You can sit. So I'm saying, if we just fill the whole room, because people are going to trickle in, it's not a problem. So this is where I want to land. It's a roadmap. And here's me, but here might be where you are starting, right? And somebody might be over here. If this is our destination, we're all taking distinct steps to get there. And it doesn't always have to be kind of the way we understand straight path to be linear in that way, right? Because we talked about depth, volume last week. We were talking about dimensions. So when we say ihdina siratal mustaqim, like literally from where I am right now, directionally, I can move in a multitude of ways. I can't only simply go from here in the most kind of straight line possible, but I can go on every angle imaginable in pretty much every direction other than through the ground, but I could still even go down. So pathways are not always just, I'm going to bang my head against the same wall going in one way. But if I'm here, I can literally get to here by going like this. And what ihsan allows for me to do is to understand and identify the obstacles that are coming inwardly and outwardly so that this doesn't become anything other than a spiritually invigorating experience. It doesn't mean there won't be difficulty or hardship or challenges, stress, sadness, but it's not rooted in just everything feels heavy and frustrating because I only see it myopically. Or that all of us have to pretend like we're the same exact person because we're not, right? You have this very unique sense of individualism, this rugged individualism that exists in a prism of modernity that I would argue is rooted as a byproduct of white supremacy. But what we want to understand, like you can literally read the prophetic tradition. The companions, may Allah be pleased with all of them, all had different personalities. They all had different strengths, different non-strengths. The goal of Islam is to not create homogeneity or uniformity. It's just simply not that. This first generation was all people that had different ways of engaging their life. And so too, in this mode, it's not a problem if I'm here and you're here, because we can still work towards the same destination and goal and have different modes through which we're essentially getting to that point. Do you get what I mean? And so he's creating yaqeen as the destination. Can somebody start reading? And we can start from the first part again. You want to pull it up in whatever ways that you can. Who wants to start? I want everybody volunteer at once. Yeah, go ahead.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. You must, beloved brother, strengthen and improve your certainty. For when certainty prevails in the heart and establishes itself therein, the unseen becomes as if seen. And the man aided by providence says, as Ali, may God ennoble his face, said, were the cover to be removed, I would not increase in certainty. Certainty is power, firmness, and stability of faith so great that it becomes as a towering mountain, which no doubts can shake and no illusions rock. Rather, doubts and illusions disappear completely, and when they come from outside, are neither listened to by the ear nor heeded by the heart. The devil cannot approach the possessor of such certainty. He flees from him, fears his very shadow, and is content to keep at a safe distance. As the Messenger of Allah, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, said, Satan is afraid of the shadow of Umar, radiallahu anhu, and Umar never takes a road, but that Satan takes another.
Okay, so this is giving us a baseline definition of what yaqeen actually is. So what is Imam Al-Haddad saying? This is what yaqeen is. What do you take from these paragraphs? So what I'd like you to do is, more people are trickling in, turn the person next to you, ideally just in pairs, no more than 3, but in pairs. And everybody should do it. Turn the person's next to you. What are we pulling away from this as a baseline definition of yaqeen, right? Because words have meanings to them. And you can't reach something if it has ambiguity. If I say to you, go over there is literally everywhere that's not here. It doesn't work. But if I start to give you narrow, specific understandings, and not narrow in a negative way, but specific in the sense that it offers clarity. The same way you know that this is floor, and everybody knows what floor is. The same way you know that that's a ceiling, and everybody knows what we're talking about. We need to have a definition that is concrete, because we understand the meanings of things through the names of things. Does it make sense? So turn to the person next to you. If you don't know them, ask them their name. Tell them your name. Everyone's really nice in the room. And as we kind of get to know each other, we'll learn more. And then what are you pulling from these two paragraphs? What is yaqeen? Just 2 quick minutes, we'll discuss it. Yeah, Tariq went together.
Okay, Mike, you good?
So what we're gonna need to do is get those tables again at some point, and from the closet, get like the plates and other stuff. So we don't have to do it. I'll say we're
It's funny, that's actually because I was reading like the things that were given on set, like where the cover to be read out 9 pieces here. Not fixed in binary. That's because they were at such like high levels. You know? Yeah.
got it?
I guess it also talks about the value of you get to a point where, like, for example,
Samira's holding your group back. Just cut her out. You don't need the difference. Yeah. You asked Amira where the dates are also.
The what?
The dates. We had dates.
Yeah.
You just like Slacker and ask her. No one's here except me and you. Yeah, like box of the dates coming last week. You can sit. You just Slacker and ask her. Okay. So, what are we pulling from the paragraphs, right? Not like your individual definition, which is not a problem, But what are you taking from what the text is saying? You see the difference? Yeah. And in your own thoughts, processing it, synthesizing it. So if we start to create a definition to yaqeen, what is it? What is he saying? Who wants to start? We're on the clock, guys. Maghrib is in like 30 minutes. I talk a lot. So the combination of you not talking and me speaking too much, we're not going to stop till like close to Isha time if we go at this pace. So somebody tell me, what did you talk about in your groups? Yeah.
We talked about how the paragraph is very straightforward, the second paragraph, that it's this firmness, the stability of faith, and that nothing can really shake it, or like Satan can't even approach you if you have such certainty.
Great. What else? Unshakable or yeah. What else did you take from it? Yeah.
I think like the immovability of it, like once you reach that point, I think it depends on that, or like, and that ability cannot be shaken by like doubts and this thing comes from having thought about the thinking to your own firm understanding of like why you're practicing this faith, and kind of that's what makes them shape towards that. It's not just like blindly following, but it's like I feel like this one.
Yeah, this is a conviction. Right? Like you can't believe something because somebody else believes it. Belief is within you, right? You can dress as someone else dresses, and you can eat as someone else eats. You can't believe it because somebody else believes it. That's why Islam is a religion, whether you're born into it or you convert to it, it's not an inherited religion. You cannot inherit belief. That's not how it works, right? So the idea that you are Muslim simply as an identity variable, it doesn't necessarily give us that indication, right? What else do you pull from this? Anybody else? Yeah.
We talked about how like certainty isn't binary, so it's not like you can go from nothing to like being that unshakable mountain. It's sort of like you have to build it up and like, yeah. And it talks about how like the highest levels are obviously like the companions, where like Ali Radhan literally said like, oh, if the veil of Allah was put aside, like my certainty wouldn't increase. Like he's at like the max and stuff. But it's not binary like that. Like you have to build it up.
Yeah. So everybody has reasonable faith, right? And we could take out a lot more definitions from this, but yaqeen essentially etymologically is rooted in a root that means you're like stuck in it, it's set. And so the idea here is understanding reasonable faith and what that means and how it can be a conduit to recognizing what firm faith in this sense can actually be experienced as. Reasonable faith is something that whether somebody is Muslim or not, whether they follow another religion or not, whether they have any relationship with spirituality or faith, they can be deeply atheistic. Every single person in the world has some aspect of reasonable faith, meaning that they have belief and conviction that certain things are just going to transpire in certain ways, right? You came to this building, you believe reasonably that when you hit the light switch, the lights are going to turn on. You have a belief that in your home, when you turn the water on at the faucet, the water is going to come out. It's reasonable faith. You don't wake up every morning saying, I wonder if water is going to come out of the faucet today. Is today a day that water will not come? Will the lights perhaps not work? Is the toilet not going to flush? Every single day, we exert decisions based off of reasonable faith. The subway will come eventually. The subway will likely get stuck in the tunnel, right? There's going to be all kinds of things that you can reasonably have conviction in, and you will then exercise decisions and choices off of it. This is where the two go hand in hand, right? Say that you knew there would be no lights in your house, then you would act accordingly. You get some candles, you get some flashlights. Somebody tells you there's going to be a hurricane, electricity is going to go out. You're going to be in a place where you prepped because you are putting conviction not now just as something that's inward, but something that informs what comes from me in my decision-making process thereafter. Do you get what I'm saying? What this kind of yaqeen is rooted in, as the chapter goes forward, a belief in what this religion theologically espouses as actual fact. There is an afterlife. There is one God. There is accountability for decisions and choices. Promises are true that come from the divine. There is the existence of messengers and books and angels. And there's theologies that are rooted like that. But our religion also has theologies that are rooted in a theology of community building, a theology of patience and forgiveness, a theology around so many different ideas of social equity and principle that are not just rooted in abstract understandings that somehow get us very off track. There's not just all debates about the verse that says, does God's hand, etc., the throne of God, mean actually a hand like this or a chair like this? That's not what it's all about. But a faith that is so firm that Ali radiallahu anh can say, if the veil was lifted, it still wouldn't change anything. Because his conviction is so tangibly rooted in realities that he's exerting all of his decisions and choices off of it, right? Believing in God the way you believe the lights are going to turn on. Believing in God's promises the way that you are going to believe that the water is going to work. Believing that the avoidance of haram, the performance of obligation, the commission of kindness, generosity, compassion, you believe in what Allah says in those moments. That doubt can try to come at you, but it doesn't even waver you. Why is this a destination? Why is it not the starting point? Why is he saying this is where you want to get to?
We can't start from unshakable faith.
How come? Why can't you start from unshakable faith? Why is yaqeen not the starting point? How many of you were here at Jummah on Friday? Right? Brother took his shahada on Friday, right? Muslim literally since Friday, mashallah. May Allah grant him ease and make him from the best of his righteous servants. He's been Muslim for 4 days, right? You know what I'm saying? He has faith, but could one reasonably say that right off the bat, when life comes at him, he's just got to somehow now do everything in accordance with no struggle, no challenge? Probably not, right? Why?
Our start points are different.
Our starting points are different. What else? Yeah.
Takes like wisdom.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Distraction?
Distractions. Of course, you're gonna say something.
No, I just
Yeah.
I have no idea what's going on.
You have no idea what's going on. Most of us don't. Yeah.
I think that as you explore the faith and as you live life within the faith, there's a lot of questions that come up in everyday life of like, what should I do here? What should I do there? And that requires additional learning, exploring, etc. So
Definitely.
there's struggle in that.
Are these things that exist absolutely exclusive of each other? Can I have a faith in something and still waver in other places, right? Can I identify what actual conviction means? And is it simply just that everything kind of goes according to what I understand perfection would be, or is struggle a part of it? Choices are going to be coming into play. You want to know what you believe in, you got to look at like your decision making. It's a destination point because it's a lifelong journey. And there's hadith that tell us things that some people, they'll wake up in the morning on faith, and at the end of the day, they will end the day without faith. There's some people who will start out the day without faith, and they'll end the day with faith, right? May Allah make us those of sound iman, but you're gonna have a lot of oscillation. The Prophet ﷺ says that your faith is like a pendulum. It's gonna swing, it's gonna have ups and downs. Allah, is going to be in a place where the idea is this is what you want to get to, right? You want to get to the goal is like firm conviction that I'm not in a place where I waver on certain things. And so you're working towards it. Some days are going to be easy, some days not so much. Some days you're going to feel like a super Muslim. Some days you're going to get to a place where it's going to be heavy. The inclusion of the quote that says, Shaitan has no impact on the likes of Umar radiallahu an, is that the idea is to not be perfect. But the same way you have yaqeen in the sense of what your mind might be taking to you, that even when you make a mistake, you don't falter in the faith that there is nothing you can do that's greater than Allah's mercy. Shaitan's goal is to not get you to just slip, and then that's the end of it. But the idea that when you slip, now runs rampant through your head, that I am somehow completely distant from the divine. I am at like the other end of things. I can't have a relationship with Allah. I am not one that's entitled to have a relationship. Guys, thanks for getting all this stuff. Do you get what I'm saying? And now it starts to have a trickle down effect, right? That what's the point of me even trying to pray? I'm not really good at this Islam. I'm not the one that should be sitting in the halaqa, sitting in the first row of the Jummah prayer. It's not somebody like me. I'm the one who, it's my own self-deprecation that says, you know what? What's the point of me telling my boss that I need to take a break, or tell my professor, or leave from class, or to go find a quiet space to pray? It starts to now come at the root of it, which is in your heart, that can trickle in really easily. The idea is to not have yaqeen in the ritual. The ritual is not what you have certitude in. The certitude you have in is the one that told you to utilize ritual as a means to connect to him. Do you get what I'm saying? Does that make sense? And it's a destination point, because each one of us in this room, all of us, is a work in progress. But you're not going to make it easier if you don't know what it is that you're trying to get to and what the actual destination is. You got to want it for yourself. The Prophet ﷺ has a person come behind him with his sword unsheathed, saying, Muhammad, who will protect you now? Without any hesitation, he says, Allah. The sword drops from the hand of the person. It's real conviction. God is my protector. God is the one that provides me with food. I don't bring sustenance to my children. I might be the cause of their sustenance getting to them, but Allah is the provider, not me. I'm not in a space where I don't have recognition of what my actual role is. This conversation becomes that much more critical because it silos conviction to a place of stability and firmness. In order to understand what something is, you have to also know what it's not, right? What I want you to do is take 2 minutes within yourself and just really now reflect, not self-deprecate, not ruminate, but contemplate. What do I actually believe in? What is it that makes me choose the choices that I choose? What are the convictions that inform my decision-making? The principles that I root my actual movements in. Do you get what I mean? Because if you don't know what you believe in actuality, right? You believe whatever you believe. But if you don't know what it is, it doesn't mean that it's still not governing your decision-making. You see what I'm saying? So for a minute, really quick, what do I put my trust in? Right? What is the things I actually have iman in? Is it that hard work is going to guarantee me a job and a degree is going to guarantee me a spouse and that means I'm going to have a kid and I'm going to get a house and that's just how it works? Do I have a belief that I somehow will follow this rigid formula of success, and that's what's going to render goodness for me? Do I believe that these are the sources of validation and I'm somehow inadequate if I don't have these things? Do you get what I'm saying? Do I believe in righteousness? Do I believe in mercy? Do I believe in integrity? And then you can trickle it down to some of these other theologies. Do I believe in an afterlife? Do I believe in a God, not just as a creator? Because you can believe that God is Al-Khaliq, that he made you. It doesn't mean that you believe that he is Al-Wadud, the source of unconditional love, that he is Ar-Rahman, that he is Ar-Rahim, that he is Arham Ar-Rahimin, that he is the most merciful of those who show mercy. Do you know what I'm saying? Just for a minute, be at peace with the silence, not in a frenzy, because it's just you looking inward. What do you actually believe in? What are your individual convictions? Demonstrated through how you live your days, how you approach your nights. I just want you to think about it. And then we're going to come back in like 60 seconds, okay? So within yourself, you want to close your eyes? Close your eyes. You want to write things out? Write things out. But be with yourself comfortably. Okay. How did that feel as a process to look inwardly and try to determine for yourself, not what your actual conviction is, the end result, right? But just going through thinking about it. What was that like for you? You want to say something?
It was liberating because I mean, you don't think about it enough, and then it's not even like it's like you said, it's not about self-deprecation. It's more about just finding yourself where you are, and then how to go forward from where you are to where you want to be, and that's different for every person, right? So it's not even about like, well, am I doing something right or wrong? It's more like, well, this is where I'm at, and starting to, but this is where I should be going, or maybe these are the things I could change.
What else? How was it for anybody? Just reflecting on this process of it. Was it hard? Was it easy? Yeah.
It's a bit fun, but it's also eye-opening because I realized that like if a friend came to me with like reflecting, I would be more understanding and compassionate, and like talk about the characteristics of like you were seeing compassion on. But like when it comes to me, like I'm very harsh. So I realized like I should be more compassionate towards myself, like I would be to a friend.
Yeah. It's really easy to give other people wisdom. But when you got to drink your own tea, it's really easy to be harsh on yourself. You will jump to empathize, hopefully, inshallah, provide care, understanding to others. But you don't go so easy on yourself when it comes to matters like this. Do you know what I'm saying? Doubt is something that this chapter interjects in these first two paragraphs, right? The place of shak is never something that overtakes certitude. This is an actual legal maxim in our tradition, right? It says, that certitude is not lifted by doubt, right? So the quintessential example that's utilized in books of fiqh is, do I know if I have wudu or not, right? I'm sitting here, I don't know, did something come out? Did something not come out? Did I break it? I'm not sure. The certitude is that you did make wudu. The doubt comes from potentially shaitan's waswasa. You don't know if it did break, it did not break. So you rely on what's certain, that you made wudu, and then you go with that, right? Does it make sense? In matters elsewhere too, it becomes important to understand. And doubt now is not just about things that are external, but this is a whole part of where I want to get to. And what shaitan gets to you on is rooted in a cognitive function that all of us have, which are our core beliefs. This is not a belief in Allah and his angels and his messengers and his books and the last day and other, the good and bad of it. But it's a cognitive function that interjects itself in any human. Can you guys move in this way? Just in case people start to trickle in from other, can we try to move in a little bit too? A core belief is what? Who knows? Anybody? So all of you have core beliefs. I have core beliefs. Whether we're conscious of them or not, they formulate through our own socialization. A core belief is something like, I am worthy of love. Or I am not worthy of love. I am worthy of success. I am not worthy of success. People like me. People dislike me. Through your upbringing, your socialization, traumatic life experiences, difficult life experiences, you start to create cognitive beliefs that can interject doubts very easily. How we then relate to each other has to be with care, because you don't know what kind of stuff people go through. And when you see them only as a box that they're definitely bigger than, and you lack kindness, you lack compassion, you lack husn al-dhan, it adds now the difficulties that come from some of these things. The quintessential example that's utilized is of a circus elephant. If you take some classes with me at this university, or you've been coming to Jummah here and other places, we talk about this often. You can convince yourself of anything. You can convince yourself that you are a terrible human being. It's not going to help you get to this place. Spirituality in our tradition is heavily rooted also in principles of self-care. Mental, emotional wellness is deeply attached to spirituality. So this core belief, the example that we were going to use, the circus elephant, it is reared as a child to be tame, to learn helplessness. It's tied up with a rope, and as it gets older and it gets bigger, it's the same rope that ties it. From the outside looking in, we could all go to the circus and wonder, why is this little circus man able to control this massive beast? Doesn't make sense. It's not a physical shackling. It's a psychological shackling. And it's not about what you perceive, but it's about how the elephant perceives itself. Do you see? And this is where doubt can heavily become a block in getting to this place. And then the things that you have firm conviction in, that really they don't offer what they claim to offer. Money is not going to give to you what yaqeen and Allah will give to you. There's no ni'mah, blessing, that is universal, other than iman, that any one of us will have the same experience, right? May Allah only give you the best in this world and the best in the next. There's people who will have marriages and it will be amazing. There's people who will have marriages and it will be horrible. There's people who have children and it'll be great. There's people who have children and it'll be the worst thing in the world. There's people who will have houses and it'll be nice. There's people who have houses and it'll be frustrating. There's no blessing that universally is understood to be just a ni'mah in that sense. Even good things can be a fitna. Your access to wealth can be a fitna. It doesn't have to be like a source of benefit. Do you get what I mean? When you put this into those material things, they will sometimes fail you. What Islam posits and the goal you want to work towards is a certitude that is rooted in what it's telling you is going to give you both inward and outward healthiness, as well as worldly and otherworldly gains, right? Part of this process, and this is what I said to you at the end of our session last week, was you got to sit and actually think about now, here's me, and this is where I want to get to. Where am I really at here? Do you see yourself the way Allah sees you? Your potential, your beauty, your luminosity? Do you allow for yourself to embrace everything that makes you what it is that you are? This is why ihsan is about beauty. The husn of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam allowed for him to see what was inherently good in people around him. And he connected to a God that he believed in that also gave him a sense of strength. You understand what I mean? So working ourselves towards this. So it's not just practice that's attached to things that with very ease I can throw away because they're not rooted in conviction. A body that has no soul to it is like a ritual that has no heart in it. It's just a corpse. You can go through the forms and stand in your prayer. It doesn't mean that you're prostrating beyond your body. You got to prostrate with your heart too. And these things are what create now your heart to be full, and you want to have positive core beliefs, not negative core beliefs. You are worthy of love. You are worthy of success. You are beautiful. You are important. You are worth it. If you have people in your life who surround you with all kinds of conversations, they give you access only when you become other than what you are. You got to leave your religion at the door. You got to leave your identity at the door. They don't see you bigger than your skin color, your race, your class. They don't determine how they deal with you other than what they perceive of you, right? You don't want to give continuity to that flawed perception by seeing yourself in that same way. You see what I mean? So it's not a joke that our prophet had companions that had real life struggle, man. And if all of your friends look just like you and dress just like you and they're exactly where you are, there's a good chance that it's not that you love them, but you only love the parts of them that remind you of yourself. And when you can be with people that are different from you and take from them, and in large part start to love yourself as a whole being. Because if you think that you're a mistake, by extension, you're saying God did something wrong by making you. And even if you can't see what's there within yourself, our God does not make mistakes, man. Do you get what I'm saying? Okay. Can somebody... I don't know who's fasting, who's not, but can you open one of these and just pass them around? Take a date, even if you're not fasting. They're good for you. And we'll pause in like 10 minutes to pray mothers, inshallah. I want us to just read through the next paragraph really quickly. Can somebody do that as we're passing out? Because he's going to start to get into steps, practical ways to build yateen. Can somebody start from certainty derives its power and excellence from many things? Who's got it in front of them? Go ahead.
Miracles they were and which befell those that ceased to bring about certainty indicated by his word. Is it not enough for them that we have sent down upon them?
Great. So in this paragraph, he's saying, amongst many things, what is he saying? Maybe we can get some quick responses. What do you take from what he just said? How do you learn about who Allah is? How did you build for yourself a conceptualization of God? Yeah.
From his names and attributes.
That's how you personally learned who God is to you?
Like to be able to understand him better.
Okay, great. What else? Yeah.
Personally observing things that happen in my life and how they're all interconnected, and the things that I learned from painful experiences. I realized later on why I went through those things, and I believe that Allah put them in my life for that reason, and that made me more aware of Allah's greater plan.
Amazing. Most of us don't learn about Islam through the Quran and the Hadith. And you might say, that's really strange. But at a base level, most of us learn about Islam just from the people who talk to us about Islam. If you grew up in a home that was filled with more harshness and anger, and religion was weaponized, you went to a mosque where the mimbar was filled with a lot that was just rooted in negatives. I'm not hating on anybody. You have a lot of Muslims who suffer from generational trauma as a result of colonization, slavery, all kinds of things that are not easy to contain within oneself. And they get on the mimbar and they're letting out a lot of different things that are hard. That person needs compassion towards them as much as we need compassion towards us. And Allah make it easy for all of us. There's a paradox to decision making, that when you don't make a choice, you've essentially chosen. And choices are not just, am I gonna break my fast on a date or water? But perspective is also a choice. Do you understand what I'm saying? Perspective is also a choice. You can choose positivity, you can choose negativity. There is a hadith Qudsi. It's a genre of hadith that is sometimes referred to as the sacred tradition, sacred hadith. It follows a construct that says the Prophet ﷺ has said, the Prophet, peace be upon him, has said, Allah has said, and then it says what Allah has said. And in one of these narrations, it says, Ana inda dhanni abdi bi, that I am as my servant thinks that I am. So the God that you believe God to be is the God that you worship. If you believe in a God that's an angry old man in the sky looking for a reason to punish you, why would you want to chase after a deeper conviction in that God? If you had angry parents, elders who yelled at you, and it then gave you by extension a perspective of who God is, you walk into a mosque and nobody greets you because you're not of the same culture. No one invites you to their holiday parties. What would religion make sense to you as? You're not dressed, quote unquote, the way a Muslim should be. And people look down at you and they push you, and it gives you an extension, a core belief that starts to formulate itself around how you understand religion. You understand? It's introspective because you got to know what the roots of it are. You got to know what the blocks are in the way that are keeping you subjectively from getting to where you shouldn't want to be in the sense of obligation, but that you're entitled to be. You're entitled to have contentment. You're entitled to have fulfillment. You can't find it by buying what a consumer-driven society tells you will give you just fleeting happiness. You want to feel good, not temporarily, but all of the time. And so what this first point strategically is saying, learn about what you believe in through the book, not from people who claim to speak on God's behalf, who have no idea what it is that they're talking about. Don't be the person that gives platitudes to people. Somebody sits with you and says that my father used to hit me when I was younger. You don't tell them. Have more trust in Allah. This is a test from God. Why is God testing a child? Does it even make sense what you're saying at this point? Somebody's trying to reconcile the realities of real hard challenges. You can't meet them with statements that at a surface level seems like it makes sense, but in reality has no substance to it. Islam is about reality. It's not about chasing after utopian-esque ideals and notions. You got to unlearn certain things. Before we break for Maghrib, I want to give you a personal anecdote around this. I grew up and I had Muslim family, alhamdulillah. My family's great. I love them immensely. My parents, really supportive in every which way that you could think immigrant parents would be. My brother married someone who is Egyptian. My sister is married to a convert who's half Puerto Rican, half Dominican. My wife is a convert. None of us are doctors. We are all failed at the brown troop, right? My parents, they were good with all of it. They gave us what it was that they thought we needed. Learning the Arabic of the Quran, learning how to pray. We got mechanics. I went to Sunday schools where I don't even know what I took from some of them. I met some good individuals, but in terms of substantive information, wasn't really necessarily so much that was there. And then most of the society I lived in was secularized to the point that it didn't inculcate a sense of meaning, purpose, etc. So I didn't ever really stop to think about who is God to me and what's the God that I believe in. And as I got older in the latter part of my teens and I started to explore religion and spirituality a little bit more, I was trying to make sense of what does this mean to me? When I got to a place where Islam started to resonate a little differently, and I started to actually read the Quran, and I started to read the Hadith, and it boggled my mind because the first realization that I had was, I don't believe in the same God that is the God of Muhammad. The God that I believe in does not do for me what he's doing for the Prophet. And that's not because he's doing something different. I just don't see God in that way. The ways that these people spoke about God, connected to God, found strength through God, had hope in God. To me, religion was just about do's and don'ts. Why are you eating that? Don't talk to girls. Music is haram. All kinds of things that were so limited in their scope. And it's not something that you all have not experienced also. But think about it. It's not a rant. Think about it in terms of core beliefs and what it brings you to here. Even if you're a convert, you know you get from Muslims only what they possess to give to you in the first place. I've talked to 3 different people in the last 2 days who want to consider Islam as their religion. Each one of them has said to me, I don't understand why, if I'm a Muslim, people have problems with dogs as a Muslim. One guy said to me today, my Muslim friends told me I can't have a pet if I'm a Muslim. That's crazy. But think about it for yourself. If you can relate to it, what are you doing to understand the religion differently? At what point did you stop learning about it? Engaging text, being bold enough to actually read it, to ponder, to live differently. And then you unlearn it. I read hadith where the Prophet would say to his companions in the aftermath of a battle, they see a mother looking for his child, and they're in a state of just duress. And when they come upon each other as a mother and child would, who had been separated, the Prophet uses the example as a teaching moment. Do you believe this mother would ever harm her child? Do you believe she would ever throw him into a fire? Of course not, O Messenger of Allah. Allah is more merciful to his creation than a mother is to his child. They go on a journey and they stop now, the caravan, to have a meal with some Bedouins. And there's a Bedouin woman cooking at a large pot that sits atop some flames, a fire. And as she's cooking, her infant son goes to touch the pot and she pushes him out of the way. And then she comes to the Messenger, sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wasallam, peace and blessings be upon him, and says, are you the one that claims to be a messenger of God? And he says, yes. And the one that claims that God is more merciful than anything that shows mercy. And he says, yes. And she says, even more merciful than a mother is to his child. And he says, yes. And then the Bedouin woman says to our prophet, that know this, a mother would never let her child feel any pain. And our prophet just sheds tears in response to it. And some of you have heard me tell this story before, but it's important to hear and reflect on it. I travel a lot, and not as much as I used to. I'm getting old. I'm turning 40 in a month, October 18th. I welcome gifts. Feel free to give to me. And some years ago, when my daughter was maybe about 2, my son hadn't been born yet. Maybe she was 3. We went to California during Ramadan, where I was invited to give some talks. And we were in the Bay, San Francisco, beautiful place. And one night, some of our community members from here, alumni, those who had moved to the other side of the country, we had got together with them. When I travel, I like to meet up with people that are from here, right? I love meeting other people, but I love you all more than you realize. And being able to see you again, even when you've moved elsewhere, and to hear about what you're doing and spend time with you, it just brings a different familiarity to the heart. It's my blessing to serve this community. Alhamdulillah. When we were there, they said, let's go watch the sunset over the San Francisco Bay. And so we walked up this kind of small hill, if you've ever been to that part of San Francisco, and you know what I'm talking about. We got midway and there was a lookout point, and somebody had set up some stones near some telescopes. And my baby girl, Medina, she's like 2 or 3 at that time. She's got a lot of life, a lot of energy. They both still do, alhamdulillah. Make dua for them. They're the most amazing blessings in my life. My daughter, she's jumping now from stone to stone to stone. And then all of a sudden, as she jumps from one to the next, she slips and hits the ground really hard. And she's never hurt herself before. And if any point she's got like a bump or a bruise, my wife Priya or I, one of us would just hold her close as she cried until she stopped crying. And so Priya, many of you have met her, and she grabs Medina and holds her close. And then she turns towards where we are. And unbeknownst to Priya, Medina has this deep gash on her head and blood is just gushing out. All of us move in different directions to do whatever we can. Napkins, bandages, whatever we can find. My wife is just standing in shock, horrified. A few minutes later, we have the wound stitched up. My wife has still not let go of our daughter. We go down that mountain, get into a car, go to a place where I'm supposed to speak after iftar. The whole time, Priya is holding Medina in her arms. We then leave from that iftar dinner and we go have dinner at another restaurant. This is what Muslims do. We eat 5 times after the sun is set. The whole time in the cab, all the way to the restaurant, in the restaurant, until we get to the hotel, she's holding our child literally the whole time. And now it's close to midnight, 1 a.m. We're in the hotel. She places our daughter finally in the bed, still holding her. And then after some time, lets her be near the pillow on her own, and then just stands and stares at her. And I asked myself in that moment, do I believe in a God that loves me more than my wife loves her daughter? Do I believe in a God that wants what's best for me more than Priya does Medina? And it was really hard. I'm not going to lie. It is really hard to unlearn a lot of things that I didn't even know were in my head. Eventually, I got to a place where I said yes. And it makes the world a totally different place to walk through. That I don't have to be in a place where I have this conceptualization of the divine that is a being that's just watching me, but rather one that's watching over me. I can want to aspire to build a firm conviction and embrace the promises that he makes Azawajal. And so in this first part, Imam Al-Haddad, he's saying that you want to build your faith, read Allah's book, reflect on the divine names, be in a place where your understanding of these principles is coming through the actual text and not from just what people say or how they treat you or how they fail to treat you. I'm sorry for the people who don't do right by you. And I would advise you, if you're a person who does not do right by someone, who speaks a lot and is not conscious of the impact that your words have, the default in our tradition is silence. Man kana yu'minu billahi wa bil yawm al-akhir falyaqul khayran aw liyasmut. That whosoever believes in Allah on the last day, let him speak good or be silent. So you're going to open your mouth, say something good. Otherwise, just be quiet, just listen. Understand a person as a whole. And this conversation is about you starting to understand you. Why do you see the world in the ways that you see it? What are actually your core beliefs? What are your convictions? If you have heard somebody tell you that you are stupid, you are dumb, you are not good enough times, you came into this week like last week, 7 days past, and you said every day 50, 60 times, Khalid Latif is stupid. Khalid is stupid. He's so stupid. Man, what a stupid guy. And at the end of this conversation, you'd be like, man, everything he said was so stupid. Because your self-talk creates the perspective and it affirms itself through how you process reality. You don't know why you see yourself the way you do. You don't know why you see Allah the way that you do. But now is the time to figure out those pieces. You cannot start to move forward if you don't know the ropes that are holding you back and tying you up. You get what I mean? Between this week and next week, you want to read the rest of this chapter on certitude. We're going to talk about the next 2 points. Point number 2, it's going to say, just look at the world around you. Look at the sun setting. Look at things to gain insight. We'll continue onto the next part where we talk a little bit more as we set on like the spiritual journey. But you got to start here and say, what's really going on within me? If that's a hard conversation to have individually, don't have it by yourself. We are happy to sit with you and talk to you and listen to you and hear you. Your spiritual heart, the qalb, has capacity. It is not infinite in its ability to take things in. Does that make sense? And so go through the exercise. We're working towards something. We want to get to a place where we feel that ease. We feel that contentment. Doesn't mean the world will stop being hard. It's a difficult place. May Allah make it easy for us, but how we respond to it will be different. Any thoughts before we make just 2 quick announcements and then we stand for Maghrib? Anything that comes up for people? Everybody break their fast. Who's fasting on a date? Yeah. You fast up? Okay. A point to reflect on between this week and next week. Who is God to you? What role does your God play in your life? Not somebody else's, not like just rote regurgitation of something you heard in a YouTube lecture, not something that was written in a book of theology that was likely written to just disprove somebody else's theology, but empowering theology, a theology of love, a theology that gives you strength. Who is your God? Crack open the Quran if you haven't opened it. Read what it says. Get to the passages that talk about who Allah is.